Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Homesteader podcast. Homewrecker podcast. I am the Golden Greek, Alex Arion, joined as always by my beautiful, lovely, gorgeous wife, Monique. Monique, how are you?
Howdy. I'm good. How are you?
Did you just say howdy?
I did.
You said howdy.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's new with you?
I'm decided I'm going to learn how to knit, which
Okay.
is really exciting because I've been wanting to. I used to knit when I was a kid. My Aunt Sue taught me when I was staying with her in Switzerland. I did some knitting. And this was back when you can bring knitting needles on an airplane too. But
the good old days.
I was able to do it as a kid, pretty basic stuff. But I decided that now is the time I'm ready to take on a new project, and that is learning how to knit. Because I want to knit my own stuff. I want blankets and sweaters and clothes and whatnot for us.
Could you make me a poncho?
I could once
I've always wanted
I
a
get good
poncho.
at it.
Terrific.
Yeah, so that's exciting.
That is exciting.
And
That's
I also
wonderful.
decided we have so many farms in the area. I want to get the wool from the alpacas and sheep and basically dye it with using plants and then make my own yarn from it because I'm weird and I want to do everything myself from scratch.
I don't think that's weird. I think that's ambitious.
Yeah.
And that can be, it's typically considered a great thing.
I just want to know how to do
Just
everything
as long as you don't
myself.
take on too much.
I know,
that's
but
all.
that's why I've been waiting.
That's
I
the
feel
only
like I'm
time
in a good
ambition is
place.
bad.
Yeah.
Good.
I'm excited. Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, when you told me you want to do your own wool and everything, I'm like, wow, okay, great.
Well, so I know we have so many local farms.
Sounds
I
good.
know where the material is coming from. I know what's in the yarn. It's to me, it's part
what
of
else
being
would be in the yarn
self-sufficient.
other than
Well,
wool?
So if you look on Amazon at yarn, I'll do a search for like wool. And they'll say, oh, this is pure wool or alpaca wool. And then you read the fine print and it's not. It's a blend. But
Blend with what? Like what other stuff?
usually like synthetic fibers.
Okay.
Because that's what makes it cheaper. So it might be 60% natural fiber, but then they put in another percentage of something like acrylic or polyester or whatever, synthetic fiber. And so you got to be careful and really read what is in the yarn you use.
So what's the danger of having or wearing synthetic fiber for anybody that maybe doesn't know?
It's not really good for your skin. So many of our clothes are made from synthetic fibers, and we should really be wearing natural fibers. It's more breathable for your skin. Otherwise, you're basically wearing like chemically treated plastics on you. And they might feel nice and look great, but it's not really the best for our skin and our bodies.
So that the chemicals and things that are in there can wreak havoc on your skin, your
They can.
endocrine system, all kinds of things. So they say. Interesting. Wow. Okay. Well, I didn't realize that they, if you're looking up, like, I guess my question is what's the point of infusing this?
It's cheaper.
I guess.
Because most people don't want to spend a lot of money on yarn, which I get it. Because if you're doing like a blanket and you need so many yards of yarn, it gets costly. People don't want to do that. So what they do is, you get the benefit of the alpaca, the softness, but then we put some synthetic fibers in too to bring down the cost.
Interesting.
That's at least my perspective of it.
It's too bad they don't just, do they have options where you could just buy wool without the synthetic stuff?
Yeah,
in it?
you can. It's more expensive.
Okay. All right.
And that's why I just want to find local farms and make it home myself.
All right. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Good deal.
How about you? What's going on? Anything?
No, nothing new. Same old, same old.
Well, before we get into
Yes.
what I was going to talk about today, what we're going to talk about,
Mm-hmm.
I just want to mention I am a certified hypnotherapist. So if you're looking to do something good for yourself, a little self-care, schedule a free 20-minute consult with me and find the different ways hypnotherapy can help you. Yes, I can help you lose weight. I can help you quit smoking, whatever you want to do in that aspect. But there's so much more that it can do. It can help you with anxiety, stress. I am a certified stress management consultant, by the way. If you're feeling the stress of the year going on, schedule a free consult. Nothing to lose. It's free. It's 20 minutes of your time. See how hypnotherapy may benefit you. Go to innerstandingshypnosis.com. And if you're interested in a tarot reading or orgonite, go to tarotbymonique.com. See what I have in my shop.
There you go. So what are we talking about this week?
We're talking about chickens and eggs. And the reason why is because the other day, we don't watch the news, but sometimes I'll go on the news website and scroll and see what's going on. And there was an article about how the cost of eggs have risen so high. And this has been happening off and on for the past year or two, I believe. And we haven't been affected because we have our own chickens and get our own eggs. But they were saying one of the bigger reasons that this is happening is because of the avian flu, the bird flu.
Right.
I'm not going to get on my soapbox about my thoughts on all that. But the article said how so many people are now taking to backyard chickens so they can get their own eggs. And they had some blogger who has chickens mention the benefits, but also the cost of it. And I thought if anyone is seriously interested in getting chickens, because I think almost everybody should have chickens because they're awesome. But you really got to know what you're getting into. So if you are thinking about getting chickens for your yard, your homestead, whatever, or it's a thought that maybe in the future you want to do this, I thought I would share everything that we've learned from doing it ourselves with our listeners so they can get an idea of whether this is something for them and how it's going to affect them cost-wise versus what they're getting from it.
So we're going to just do an educational podcast today.
Yeah, sharing what we've learned.
Sharing things that we have learned.
We've effed around and found out, and we're going to tell you about it.
Yes. Now, again, these are our experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Depending on where you live, your experiences may be much different and your challenges may be much different than what we have to deal with. So keeping that in mind, we live in the Northeast. We live in New Hampshire, and that's about all I'm going to say about that.
That's all you need.
But it gets cold up here. It gets cold up here in the wintertime. So weather was a big concern for us and a big challenge for us, whereas if you live in, say, the southern United States, might not be such a challenge and issue for you.
That all factors in. It factors in with the kind of chickens you get that I'll get into.
Right. So that's just an example of something. Yeah. But why don't we get into it? How do you want to start this?
Well, I want to talk about when we lived in the city because we wanted chickens.
Yes.
And we wanted to have eggs. We wanted to be in control of what our chickens were eating. We knew what they were getting in their body, so we knew what was getting into the eggs. But where we lived, there was a city ordinance, and it was something ridiculous. Like they required a homeowner to have at least 1 acre of land for a chicken if they wanted to get 8 chicken, and then an additional ½ acre for each additional chicken. So I don't get what the rationale is on that to have, if I just want 1 chicken, I need a minimum of 1 acre.
Here's the rationale. They don't want you having chickens.
Exactly.
That's the rationale. They want to fit as many people into the city as possible, and they don't want people that have lots of land.
Yeah.
That's your rationale.
I remember looking into what if I get a couple indoor chickens? They'll be indoor pets. And even that was not allowed. I thought that has nothing to do. If I have space in my house and I want to set up something for them, nope, that wasn't allowed either, which is total BS. But eventually we moved out of the city. We moved into the mountains. We have over 11 acres of land. We have plenty of space. And we were like, we're getting our chickens. But I did a lot of research. I looked in books. I looked online. And we decided before we make any kind of commitment to have to care for another form of life, we want to make sure that we knew what we were getting into. So the first step if you're interested in getting chickens, is make sure there are no local laws or ordinances preventing you from having chickens, because it would really suck to go through all the work of setting up their shelter, their area to roam, getting their food, and then finding out you cannot have them and having to get rid of them. So make sure you can have chickens where you live.
That's a good first step.
Yeah. You then want to decide, what is the purpose of these chickens? Some people have chickens for pets, but that's not why they're kind of our pets, but that's not why we got them. We wanted them for eggs. Some people want chickens for meat. Some people want dual purpose birds, meaning meat and eggs. And I will say that I think it would be harder to raise dual purpose chickens because we've become so attached to our chickens, and to have to raise them and then slaughter them, I think it would be hard for me.
All right.
But the meat chickens are different. They're bred different, so they grow faster. And usually between 6 to 8 weeks is when you do butcher them to make meat. But I'm mostly going to focus on chickens for eggs here. So compared to many dual purpose chickens, they can take twice as long if you do want dual purpose. Just know that the chickens that are used as dual purpose, egg and meat, they do take longer than 6 to 8 weeks. So keep that in mind. Chickens.
Now, when do those dual purpose chickens, when do they start laying eggs?
So again, everything is breed dependent.
Okay, got it.
So it depends on the breed, that usually anywhere from sometimes like 12 to 16 weeks. Sometimes they go up to like 20 weeks before they lay eggs. It can take a bit of time, and depending on the chicken itself. So different breeds will produce a different amount of eggs per year. Some chickens can give 300 up to 300 eggs per year, while others might average 200 eggs a year. Chickens on average lay once every 25 to 27 hours. So you usually get 1 egg a day from a chicken, depending on how many they lay per year. But you might only get 1 egg every other day, or even 1 egg every 3 days, depending on the chicken. And that's something where, because they're on a cycle, you might notice they're laying more in the morning and then it kind of goes a little bit later. So our chickens do that. Totally normal, but you don't always get 1 egg every day from the chickens. So once you determine the purpose of your chickens, you need to decide how many you need to make sure you have enough land and space for your chickens, as well as deciding how you want to raise them. Do you want them to free range? Do you want them to stay in their running coop all day? Or some people have like little coops with space for them to move around. You need to figure out how you want your chickens to live and what you can provide for them. Some people have those like movable runs that like are on wheels, almost like a wheelbarrow, where they pick them up and move them so the chickens can go from area to area on the land. So the amount of chickens that you want or need will also determine how much space they need. Another thing to keep in mind is, if you want chickens for eggs, that chickens only produce so many eggs in their lifetime. They're born with a certain number of eggs inside of them, and once they're done, they have no more eggs. That's it. They're not going to lay anymore. So depending on the breed, some chickens live 3 to 4 years and lay for most of that time, especially the hybrids, like some of the kinds we got. The amber lynx are one of them. And other chickens can live 7 to 10 years. But after the second year, the amount of eggs can start to decline each year until eventually the chickens stop laying. So this is important to know for a few reasons. One of the first things is that once your chicken stops laying eggs, you need to decide what you want to do with them. If you want to keep them, you'll need to factor in the space and cost of feed for them. And if you want to butcher them, you have to keep in mind that older chickens, as long as they're healthy, are edible, but they're often used in soups due to the lack of tenderness in the meat. So before you even get chickens, think about, if my chickens they stop laying, what are we going to do with them Alex and I, we decided no matter what, we're keeping our chickens. So once they're done laying, they get to retire and be taken care of.
That's it.
Another thing is when chickens slow down their laying, people typically want to get the same amount of eggs that they're used to getting. So what we do is we try to go on an every other year cycle. So we got chickens, we had them for a year, so we waited until they were almost 2, then we got more chickens. And we try to keep that cycle going to keep the amount of eggs up, since by the second year, our chickens started declining in how many eggs they lay. And one of the things we did, because we're on an every year cycle and we know we're going to
every other year.
Sorry, thank you. Every other year cycle. And we know we're keeping our chickens even when they stop laying. We decided to get a shed and convert that into the chicken coop. And that way we'll have plenty of space for the future chickens as well as when our ladies get older. And then another thing to be mindful of is that chickens usually begin to molt in the early fall and early winter.
What's molting?
Molting is when they lose all their feathers. Well, not all of them, but they can lose a lot of feathers. Some of our girls, when they molt, it's like they look so small.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what happened to you? They look all like rough and just like they got into a fight or something. But they lose their feathers, and that's totally normal for them. But they tend to either lay less during this time or they stop laying completely. And a way you can notice if they're not going to be laying is their wattles and their combs. The combs is the red fleshy part on the top of their head, and the wattle is the red fleshy part under their neck. When they're bright red, that's a sign, a hormonal sign that they're laying eggs. Their hormones are right to lay eggs. When they molt, they start going pale. And that's when I know which birds aren't laying. I also am pretty good with knowing who makes what eggs too. But that's a good way to tell when you have chickens if they're laying or not. Are their combs and wattles pale and pink, or are they bright red? So because they tend to lay less because of molting, they also lay less during the winter time when it's shorter daylight hours. This is a natural cycle for them. Some people will use lights in their coop to get chickens to lay more throughout the winter. We decided not to do this for a couple of reasons. We feel that the chickens need their natural break, and it's better for them not to artificially force them to keep laying when their body should be resting. And this is just our personal preference. Also, when you use additional light to get them to produce more eggs in the winter, that means they will produce less eggs over the year. So if a chicken is born with 1,500 eggs in its ovaries and it's expected to live 10 years and naturally lays an average of 200 eggs a year, normally that chicken would lay for about 7.5 years. But when you force her to lay during the winter using the lighting to get more eggs laid each year, she'll stop laying eggs sooner because, like I had said before, they only have so many eggs in their system. So once that's done, that's done. This should all be factored in when it comes to deciding how many chickens you want. Now, once you've got all that, you want to look into the breed of chicken you want, but make a list of options. Some chickens have longer lifespans while others have shorter ones. Some chickens are larger, some are smaller. You might see a bantam chicken, those are smaller. You also want to factor in where you live in the weather, because if you live in a colder climate, you want your chickens to have shorter combs because that will help prevent frostbite for them. And because we live in New Hampshire, where we have really cold winters, snowy winters, and then we can have hot, humid summers, we wanted chickens that were cold hardy and heat tolerant, meaning they can take both extremes. Temperament is also important. We wanted chickens that were pretty docile because we don't want them trying to attack us or the kids, and we want to be able to handle them when needed. Some breeds aren't as docile. Some are more curious. Some are more friendly. So that comes into play when you're doing your research for the type of breed you want. I remember when we first started looking at chickens, I found the Australorps, which are these black chickens, and they were dual purpose birds. And I thought, oh, those will be great birds to get. And what happened to us is I started looking at hatcheries because we thought, oh, we only want to get maybe like 4 or 5 chickens to start with. And to order from hatcheries, you have to have a minimum amount. And I wasn't able to get Australorps, so we went to Tractor Supply. And the only ones they had left by the time we were able and set up for chickens were black sex-link chickens, which are a hybrid. And we were like, okay, well, we're getting these, but they're awesome.
They are. They're great.
Yeah, they're great. And we got the Australorps in 2024. We got 2 of them, and they're cool too. But I have to say, like, I'm not as impressed as I thought I would be with the chickens because the black sex-link were the first ones that we had, and they were just really awesome.
Yeah, those are great chickens.
Yeah.
They're still great chickens.
They are. We love them. And when it comes to getting chickens, as I mentioned, there are different methods to get them. So as I said before, you can order them online from a hatchery, but I think just about everywhere I've looked at, there's a minimum amount of chickens that you have to get. So what they do is they can ship the eggs to you and then you hatch the eggs, or you can get the day-old baby chicks mailed. I think it's like overnight or 2-day mail, and you pick them up from the post office. But you have to get so many if they're going to ship to you. And some places have a minimum requirement on the specific breed of chicken that you want to get. So like I said, we got ours from Tractor Supply, and we kept getting like told like, oh yeah, you want to get more chickens than you really want because when you get them, they don't all survive. So we said, okay, let's get 6. And what happened?
We'll get 6 to start,
Yep.
and all 6 of them survived.
Thrived.
Yeah, all of them.
Yes.
So that was good, though. Good.
I took it as a good thing.
Yeah, 100%.
The second batch of chickens that we got in 2024, we got 6 chickens again, but we lost one due to failure to thrive. We got 2 Easter eggers. Easter eggers are a basically mixed breed of chicken, but they have the gene to lay blue or green eggs. And one of them died with failure to thrive. We took her home. That night, she wasn't interested in eating. I did so much for her. Like, man,
yeah.
I was like using a little syringe to give her water, to try to get her water, try to give her a little food. I did everything I could for her, but it's a natural thing that happens with them. And she ended up passing after less than 48 hours.
Yeah.
And then the other Easter egger turned out to be a boy.
Yes, we got our first rooster.
Yep. So we got our first rooster.
Now, we went and replaced the chicken that passed
We did.
with 2 more chicks
Mm-hmm.
who both ended up surviving. And one of them ended up running away.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So things happen. So if you're planning on, I need to have at least 6 chickens by 8.
Yeah.
and be
then,
ready for 8
and
just in
things
case.
happen because we let our chickens free range, and
Yeah.
we were so used to our older girls always staying in the yard. And we got, in this new batch, we got pairs of each kind of breed, but some of them are way more curious than others. And the really curious ones wander off. I kept going to the road because we live on a dirt road, running up our long driveway, going out to the dirt road, trying to get my chickens back because they don't care. They're just like, oh, what's over here? What can I eat? But yeah, we ended up losing one. So overall, we lost 2 chickens in 2024, which really stunk, but it's something that happens. And when you're getting chickens, you also want to be aware of the differences between pullets, cockerels, and straight run. Pullets are the ladies. Those are the female chicks. Cockerels are the males, and the straight run is a mix of both. So if you do go to Tractor Supply or you look online and you see straight run, that means you don't know what you're getting. But also, even if you get all pullets to get all females for laying eggs, sometimes stuff happens and you could get a boy. So just be aware. We personally prefer just having ladies, but when we found out we were going to have a rooster, I fell in love with him.
Yeah, he's awesome.
Yeah,
he's great.
I call him my little gentleman.
And how did we find out that we had a rooster all of a sudden? Because we're like, wow, look how pretty. We had a name for the rooster, and it was a female name because we thought it was a female. How did we finally find out that it was actually a male?
He started crowing.
He started doing the crow early in the morning.
Oh, and it was so loud. And I'm just like, because at first I'm like, I got a feeling. I'm like, I think this might be a boy. But part of me was like, no, I want pretty colored eggs. It can't be a boy. And I kept getting a feeling. I kept saying, well, if it's a boy, we'll name him this. And
yeah. And it ended up being a boy. When he started crowing, we went, oh, we have a boy.
But sometimes some female birds, some female chickens will try to crow.
Okay.
It can happen. But yeah, no, he was a dude.
Yeah, it was. No, that was not the case with this one.
No, he is awesome. Another thing you want to decide when it comes to getting the chicks is, do you want them vaccinated or not? And if they're not vaccinated, they offer medicated feeds for the chickens. We did not do vaccines for our chickens. We did not do medicated feed. I do give herbs to them to help them, but we didn't do any of that. We've been lucky we haven't had any issues, but I check their poop for parasites. I'm always looking at them to make sure that they're healthy, they're okay, checking their eyes, checking their nose, their mouths, everything. So I can stay on top of any possible illnesses that I see occurring. But yeah, we didn't vaccinate, we didn't medicate. That was our choice. You got to figure out what's best for you, especially depending on where you live. And do you have chickens already? You want more? And you're thinking about going through the whole thing again with baby chicks, or do you have neighbors that have roosters that free range and might come over to your yard and intermingle with your chickens? All different things to think about. When we first brought our baby chicks home, we had like one of those large bins for them to live in because chicks are really tiny and the bin was huge. We used pine shavings, and I do want to say never use cedar when it comes to baby chicks, because cedar is toxic and that will kill your baby chicks. So don't use cedar shavings, cedar chips. Don't use anything cedar for your baby chicks.
Is that something that just for babies is toxic, or is that just toxic to chickens?
Everything I found, they say baby chickens.
Huh.
Yeah.
What is it? The smell of it?
There's something about it that's toxic for them.
Okay.
I didn't get too into researching that. I was just like, okay, no cedar.
No cedar.
Yep.
All right.
We got a plate heater instead of a heat lamp. So the plate heater we got adjusts as they grow. And we got like a feeder for them, a waterer for them. And as they got bigger, they kept jumping out of the bin. They would like jump up to the top of the plate heater and roost on that. Never on the roost we got them. And then they started like jumping out. So my dad made this large kind of enclosure for them, and they stayed in there. But it was just so funny because I remember a couple of times, like we put like a mesh netting on the top so they couldn't get out, just in case. And a few times they did try to get out. They were determined. So
we didn't want them getting out because they were in the house. I don't think we mentioned that.
Oh yes, the chickens were in the house. Yeah, the babies stay in the house.
For the first 6 weeks?
No.
How long is it?
16. Usually they're ready to go outside between 8 and 16 weeks, but we got our chickens in the late summer.
Oh, you're talking about the first batch? Yeah.
So we needed to make sure that all their feathers were in before they went out.
Yeah.
But yeah, you want to make sure you have the right enclosure. The second round of chickens, baby chicks we got, it's almost like a little pop-up tent that's for a puppy enclosure, but it worked out perfect for the chicks. So we got that. It like zips the top open and closed. There's like mesh, like windows for them. So there's plenty of ventilation. And that worked out great the second time around. And now we have that because it's collapsible and it takes up much less space. So having baby chicks, you got to think about, okay, where can they stay in the house? Where can I keep them where they're not going to cause a problem? and how am I going to house them? They know, I've seen they have kits where it's like Rent-A-Coop, I think makes it. And it's basically enclosure like we had, but it's really neat, but it's also really expensive. And our setup, I think, costs $40 for everything.
And and also if you have like cats or dogs, you might want to figure something else out as far as where to keep your baby chicks.
Or just make sure your other animals can't get to them.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm. So as I had mentioned that chicks usually are ready to go outside between 8 to 16 weeks. All their feathers need to be grown in. It also depends on where you live, what the temperature is like, what the weather is like. So let's get into housing chickens.
So when you say for the baby chicks, sorry, we'll just go back to that for a second. How hot does it have to be for them? Because like say you live in, live in New Hampshire, for example, or Maine or whatever, where it's cold. How warm does it have to be for them when they're babies to survive? Like if like say you keep your heat at like 65.
Oh no, that's too cold for baby chicks.
For them? Okay.
For little baby chicks, they need it hot, and that's why you need. I don't like heat lamps. I get too nervous with fires. But the heat plate is awesome because it gets warm enough that it won't burn them, but it provides enough heat for them. And I think like on average, it's like 85 to 90 degrees. To keep them warm, like little babies. And then for each week, you can go down in temperature. So for us, once they were down to about room temp is when, and all their feathers were grown in, they lost the baby feathers. That's when we're like, okay, they can go outside. They went out in the fall. I think it was like in the 60s, around like 60, 65 degrees when they went out. And that was fine because that's about what we keep the house anyway. So they went from our room temperature to outside, and then they slowly got used to the autumn, everything changing and it getting cooler. So it worked out well that year for us. But you definitely want to make sure that the chickens are warm enough because they need it hot when they're little babies. And I'm talking about like the first week.
Got it.
And then over each week, you can decrease the temperature. When it comes to housing for your chickens, I remember we were at Tractor Supply. Do you remember the cute little like chicken coop they had?
Yeah.
They had this cute chicken coop and it had like this tiny little run underneath it where they could go from the coop into this little run area. And I thought, oh, that's so cute and it's already made. But it was stupid expensive.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
And it would say it fits like 4 to 6 chickens. And I'm looking at it like, they're like going to be really cramped in there.
Cramped 4 to 6 chickens.
Yeah. Jeez. So we didn't want to do that. And we ended up finding a neighbor who has chickens. And she had 2 chicken coops that were connected by a run, which was like hardware cloth. And they could go back and forth. So we bought that from her. We took out the run because we bought our own chicken run. And we put the coops inside the run because we figured until we get something bigger, this will protect them from predators 24/7. The chicken run that we got had chicken wire, but we ended up getting hardware cloth. I think it's half-inch hardware cloth?
No, it was smaller than that.
1/4 inch?
Yeah, it was about 1/4 inch.
It was 1/2 inch or 1/4 inch hardware cloth. And we put that all over the run. And then we had it come out a couple of feet. So if anyone tried to dig, animals... Yeah,
you want to have it come out a couple of feet beyond your base, outward. That way, what happens is, and you anchor it down, and what happens is any predator that might come over, any other animal that tries to come over to get into the run has to burrow underneath in order to get in. So like mice, rats... squirrels, that kind of thing. If you have the run come out several feet, then what happens is the grass, or if it's in a grassy area, grass will come up and grow, and it will just basically fuses to the ground almost. And
that's what we did. They'll say like dig a foot down and then like bury the hardware cloth. We didn't do that. We just had it come out a couple feet, and then we put rocks all over it, and then the grass grew up and it basically fused into the ground.
Because the animal's going to try to go I mean, these small animals, they're trying to get right in where the base is.
Mm-hmm.
They don't. If you have the hardware cloth come out several feet beyond that, they're not going to go to the end of the hardware cloth and dig and burrow in. Or at least they haven't yet.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been very fortunate with that. But yeah, we tried to really predator and animal proof our run. We're pretty successful with it.
Yeah.
So far. So
yes, very lucky, because I think our chicken run is like 200 square feet. So there was plenty of room for the chickens with the coops inside, because they were smaller, but it fit them. So our 6 chickens at first all stayed in one coop. And I thought, oh, now we have the second one. But then we ended up last year getting a shed, converting it to a coop, so we didn't have to do that. It's recommended that chickens have at least 1.5 to 2 square feet of space per chicken inside of the coop, and at least 1 foot of space for each chicken on the roost. So if they're staying outside in the run during the day, they should have 4 square feet of space per chicken in that run. We do free range our chickens, but not during the winter, because they don't like the snow. And there's really nothing for them to peck and scratch at.
yeah, what are they going to get?
Yeah. So in the summer, we let them out. They have plenty of space. But during the winter, they are in the run, but it's plenty big enough for everybody. But you need to make sure chickens have enough space, because if there's too many chickens in one area, they can peck at each other and they'll fight more, and that causes problems.
Yeah, you don't want to be dealing with that. That's not fun. We had that happen with one of our chickens getting pecked at, and we ended up having to triage her and take her inside and keep her inside for, what was it, about a month?
Yeah.
About a month that she was inside, and in order for her wounds to heal and her feathers to grow back, so we could reintroduce her again.
And part of that is because, and I'll share this, I mentioned we have black sex-link chicken, which is a hybrid, and one of our girls, Blondie, her butt kept getting all red and chapped, almost like a baboon. Yeah. She lost all of her feathers. And I was like, what is going on? I tried everything. I tried herbal ointments, different like creams, antifungal, antibacterial. I tried everything on her. Nothing worked. I thought it was the strangest thing. And with her butt being so open, exposed like that around her vent area, Horace, our rooster, started pecking at her, because it's animal nature. When somebody is sick or something's wrong, often they'll peck at it because they're like, get away from us. Something's wrong with you. So Horace had pecked at her bottom. He chased her and pecked at her and caused some wounds. So we had to bring her in and keep everything clean. And what I had learned, because I was like, I need to figure this out. Black sex-linked chickens, this happens to them. Apparently it's something with that hybrid breed where they can lose feathers on their bottom and the skin gets all raw and chapped and red. So that's why we kept her inside so long, is because we wanted her feathers to grow back. And they did. We put her back outside and they fell out again, but not as bad. So now it's just a very small area that's bare compared to the big area she had before. But that was something else I learned.
It's like barely noticeable on her now. You have to like really look to see it. But before it was very obvious, like, whoa, what's wrong with her? Her backside is all just bare. Yeah. But now it's like, you have to really look and see, and you can barely spot it now. So it's gotten much better.
It has.
But it took getting her away from all the other chickens. And how long was she like that for? Like over a year.
Yeah.
She was just like that. She just had a bare, exposed bottom.
And it didn't seem to bother her, but I just felt so bad. And always, like, I try something for a while, didn't work. Okay, let me try something else. Didn't work. It was really frustrating.
Yeah.
And then I learned it's just something that happens to them. It's some kind of genetic thing. Getting back to shelter for the chickens, shelter is important for them because they need somewhere to roost, sleep, and lay. And basically roosting is when they're up high and they sleep on, usually it's like a beam of wood. And you want to make sure it's wide enough that their feet can fit on, that the feet can't wrap all the way around, because then their toes will get cold at night and their toes could get frostbite if they were wet and it got really, really cold. So the small coop that we had before we got the other chickens had the nesting area inside, but with the shed coop that we made, we ended up having to buy a nesting box that holds 6 chickens. And when it comes to nesting boxes, it's recommended to have one nesting box per 3 to 4 chickens. Now, keep in mind, you could have 12 nesting boxes with only 10 chickens, and that might not matter because they'll all want to use the same box.
Yeah.
And from what I've learned, this is because chickens will see another chicken using a nesting box, so they think that is a good, safe place to lay their eggs. And when it comes to the chickens using the nesting boxes, we've had lines for one particular box. And our chickens do what's called the egg song, where they make this noise. Usually it's when they're done laying eggs. But I think it was the Australorps that were doing it. One would be waiting to get in her nesting box. So she would do that. And we think, oh, she laid an egg. And we go over, no, she's waiting for her box.
Yeah.
They can be very particular when it comes to that.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to watch.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to inside your coop, you got to think about what you want to use on the floor to catch all of the droppings. A lot of people use pine shavings, but we found that that doesn't really absorb moisture as well, and it becomes the least cost efficient for us. We also tried hemp pellets. Those were great, but way too expensive. So we ended up moving to using construction grade sand, and that was working out great. And what we do now is in the warmer months, we use the construction grade sand, and we use a kitty litter scoop to pick up the droppings, and it's so easy to clean. But what was happening is once it started getting colder, with the sand, everything would like stick, and anything that was like soft or wet, it would get hard and freeze. So we ended up switching to pine pellets, and that works great because it absorbs the moisture very well. And then it kind of breaks down to a sand-like substance that you can use the scoop and scoop everything out. So for us, sand in the summer and pine pellets in the winter, that's what we're doing inside of our coop. It's working great. And then the other thing is that you can use the droppings to make compost. So we have an area and we mix it with leaves, and all the droppings go there. And then I have a nice fertilizer for the garden in the summertime and in the spring. But keep in mind that chicken droppings are very high in nitrogen. So just adding that to your garden will burn your plants. You want to mix it with leaves and let it break down over a bit of time before you add it to your garden. And then there's the debate on whether or not to heat and or insulate your chicken's coop. I'm personally very strongly against heated coops for a couple of reasons. The first being it's a potential fire hazard, especially when using heat lamps. But the second reason is that if you lose power and you're unable to get backup power to your coop, your chickens could die. So we don't heat our coops, and our chickens have naturally become tolerant to the cold. They're cold hardy birds. They're meant to be out there. If we were to heat our coop and we lost power on a 9-degree day, the temperature in the coop would drop drastically, causing health issues and even death, depending on how cold it got. So the other option is insulating your coop. Now, if you insulate your coop, it can help keep your coop warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer. But we did not insulate our coop. The chickens have been fine with the hot temps and the cold temps. In the summer, we make sure there's enough airflow and ventilation for them. And in the winter, it's still important to have proper ventilation so the moisture can rise up and leave the coop. Now, what happens sometimes is in the winter when there's not enough ventilation, chickens can get frostbite. The moisture comes from the droppings and even the chicken's breath. And you need to make sure ventilation is high above their roosting area so no draft comes in. It won't make them cold, but you need to make sure there's ventilation so the moisture has somewhere to rise up and go. And so it won't affect chickens in the cold weather. It's also good to make sure that you keep food and water outside of the coop, because if there's moisture in the coop, any excess moisture, that can contribute to frostbite, but also that can bring pests into your coop, and you want to avoid that. And then once you have your coop and run all figured out, you have to predator proof it. So we mentioned we use hardware cloth. On our chicken's coop, the vents and windows have hardware cloth covered on both sides. And we put hardware cloth around, like a skirt around the bottom of the coop, so that way no animals could like live under their coop. We wanted to try to keep everything away. We also placed motion sensor lights that are solar powered on the run to try to help scare away predators like bobcats, because we have those around there.
Yeah.
I mean, when it comes to predators, big ones are raccoons. For us, bobcats, bears. We had a bear. We caught it on our security camera. Went right by our front yard. It was parallel to the chicken coop. Didn't touch the chickens. So
didn't even go near it. Yeah.
Very fortunate for that.
We lucked out.
We did. But I was like, man, if a bear wanted to get in there, could it? Could it rip through all that hardware cloth? I mean,
it's a bear. It probably could.
It could probably just lay on it and collapse it.
Yeah.
But, I just hope you can only do so much. And in the end, it is what it is. But we've done everything we can to make sure like nothing can get in there to the best of our abilities. And we even, a pest control guy came by, and we were talking to him, and he looked at everything that we did to our run and coop, and he was like, yeah, I don't think anything's getting in there.
Yeah.
So that made us feel a little bit better too. And when it comes to feed and supplements for your chicken, again, you need to do your research based on your needs. We feed our chickens an all organic, soy-free diet and avoid seed oils. But organic feed is more expensive. It's also difficult to find chicken feed with no seed oils. And no soy. When you start doing that, you really narrow down what you can use. And then again, soy-free also tends to be more expensive. So to help save us money, what we did is we started fermenting our feed. And by fermenting your feed, you get a bucket, you put the feed in, you add water, and you let it sit 24 to 48 hours. You want to make sure the feed is covered by water completely. And we noticed that when we switched from dry feed to fermented feed, our chickens like to eat a lot. They were going through like a 40-pound bag in about a week. And the fermented feed lasts twice as long, even a little bit longer. And I had learned that chickens on average eat about 1/4 to 1/2 pound of food a day. So I started weighing the fermented feed that we give them. They get more than enough feed, but at least our chickens, they will eat as much as they can. You could put 20 freaking pounds of feed in front of 2 chickens and they could go through it in a day. They're just like, nope, I got my crop. I'm going to make room for it. I will eat it all. But we do give the fermented feed twice a day to the chickens, and we do have
we've got 2 feed buckets
some
in
feed
there as
bucket,
well.
yeah, for dry feed.
Some dry feed, so they can pick in and eat at that as they want to.
Well. And we also give them treats like grubs, cabbage, watermelon, berries, herbs, flowers, seeds, and other snacks. But treats shouldn't be more than 10% of their daily feed amount. You don't want to give them just all treats because that's not healthy for them. Baby chicks are placed on a chick feed that has a higher protein. So if you get your little chickie babies you order them online or Tractor Supply, wherever you go, they're going to be on what's called a chick feed, and that has higher protein. And as they get older, some brands do make a grower feed that's still higher in protein. But the chick feed is kind of ground up, almost sand gritty like. And as they get bigger, they can go to pellets or just regular feed. And when chickens get to laying age, they get moved to a layer feed, which is basically less protein but has additional calcium for them so they can lay eggs, because chickens need a lot of calcium when they lay eggs. But if you're like us and have any roosters, a layer feed won't work because higher calcium can damage the rooster's kidneys. So if you do have a rooster, give your chickens a broiler feed, or what we get is a broiler grower feed, and that has higher protein but doesn't have the additional calcium. And whether they're on a layer feed or non-layer feed, you want to make sure your hens laying those eggs do have additional calcium supplements. We use the eggshells from our chickens' eggs. We wash them. We bake them for a few minutes, 350 degrees for like 5 to 7 minutes, and then we crush them up. I usually add some limestone or oyster shell to it, and that's what we give for a calcium supplement. So you can use their eggs to give them their calcium back.
You can repurpose their eggshells instead of just throwing them in the trash.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's a good little supplement for them. And I noticed too, for a while before we started doing that, a couple of the chickens were giving us like their eggshells were very brittle. So you'd go to pick an egg up and your finger would go through it.
Yeah.
And when we started supplementing them with their eggshells on top of the other stuff that we were giving them, the limestone and the oyster shell, their eggshells are now all strong. We've had all strong eggshells since we started doing that.
Yeah. I mean,
So,
before I was giving
helps.
them oyster shell, and then I also got limestone and I was kind of mixing it, but then I started adding in their own eggs, and knock on wood, it's been going well. And the food and water delivery system that you use, all the systems vary. We bought, for our first round of chickens, we got this feeder that had a plate on the bottom. So when they step on it, this little like lid opens for the chickens to go in and eat the feed. And that was really neat, but it became a pain because food would get stuck. And when you open that lid at the bottom, you couldn't really get your hand in to move stuff down because of the way it was set up. And then that plate.
So the chickens would be sitting there trying to get food.
Yeah,
There's nothing
they
coming
couldn't.
down. They couldn't get any food. And we wouldn't know about it because we're not out there with them 24/7. So you'd be.
Yeah, I mean,
You'd go out there and they're like just all squawking at you. Like, what's wrong, chickens?
But of course, I feel bad. It's been 3 hours and I haven't noticed.
Yeah.
My poor chickens are hungry. They're fine, but the other thing with that was the rod that goes in for the plate to lift the lid, that broke. So right now, that thing is basically a roost for our rooster. He gets up there and he crows. So I left it in because he likes it. But we ended up getting a feed bucket. It was really cheap. We got 2 of them. They have handles and they have holes in them, 3 holes, so they can eat. So 3 of them can eat at once, though a lot of times they will have multiple, like shoving all their heads in one food hole. But it has like this little hood over the top. So if it was outside raining, it gives some protection. But they just go in there, they use that. It works perfect. So sometimes cheaper is just as good, if not better, than the more expensive stuff. And we, for the chickens' water system, again, these are our chickens. We want to give them the best. We got an insulated, heated water bucket. It was great until it stopped working.
Worked great for about a year and then just said, we don't want to work anymore.
Pretty much.
And the thing with it was it came in real handy during the wintertime because all we'd have to do is make sure it just stayed full and it was heated. So it would keep the water at about 45, 50 degrees.
I think it was like 50 degrees.
It just
wasn't
never
warm.
never let it freeze, but it always kept it around that temperature. So so it was perfect for them year round. And then it stopped working. And now we have to basically take water to them every day and bring it in every night, just so it doesn't freeze.
Yeah, we got another. So that one I think holds 2 gallons of water. And then we got a 3-gallon water bucket for them. And sometimes what we'll do is if it's really cold, we'll bring one out and then alternate when the other one starts showing signs of freezing. We'll bring it out and we go back and forth. Everyone has different ways to water their chickens. Some people have things hooked up to their water system on like a drip thing so they can just like have water all the time as needed. That won't work for us in the cold in New England. But again, do your research because there's a lot of different ways that you can feed and water your chickens. Another supplement I want to mention is grit. Chickens need grit because they don't have teeth. So the grit, it's basically like little tiny stones or pebbles that helps break down the food in their system. So when we have the sand, like our chickens, they have grit, but when we use that construction grade sand, that has grit in it too. So they just pick at that. So that helps us as well. And I do also want to mention when it comes to sand, don't use play sand or beach sand because that can cause an impacted crop on your chickens, meaning where they can store food, that gets caught inside and it doesn't allow them to properly digest their food. It doesn't let the food go down and that can cause problems. So I supplement my chickens with, they have their dry feed, but I add herbs and spices to it, partially for their health and partially to keep pests away. Cinnamon and red pepper flakes or even cayenne pepper is used to keep mice and ants out of the dry feed containers. I also like to mix in oregano, rosemary, thyme, calendula, and basil. Parsley is another good herb to add. And what these herbs do is that it helps their immune and respiratory systems. Another thing chickens should have is an area where they can dust bathe. We have a big tire and we fill it with a mix of the construction sand, dirt, and ash, and we mix it up, and the chickens just go in there and they dust bathe. But when we let them free range, they love to pick their favorite spots, and they basically like dig up the ground, and they get right in there and they dust bathe, and I think it's just the cutest thing.
Yeah, they go and they tore up our whole front lawn.
Yeah, but they do also eat the bugs and grubs.
They eat all the bugs and grubs, so that's a good thing too.
Yeah, and when it comes to medical care for your chickens, there's not so many vets out there who see chickens, especially at least not in our area.
Not up here anyway.
So if you're going to have chickens, either find a veterinarian who knows how to handle chickens or you got to learn how to take care of them. Now, I had a veterinary medicine background, but that didn't help me as much when it comes to chickens. But like I said, one of our girls, she got injured. I put her in the bath with some Epsom salt. I cleaned her wounds, had to dry her. And I just want to say, when I was drying her, I have her in the bathroom and I used a blow dryer and I had it on like just gentle warm heat, like on low. She freaking loved that. She liked being in the bath. She loved when I blow dried her. She acted like she was having a spa day. She freaking loved it. So some chickens might love it. Some might not go in the bath, but it is good to know what products to have on hand. We don't like the regular pharmaceutical products. We try to stay away from that. I try to use natural products. So far, it's worked out for us. But you do want to look out for things like parasites, mites, or any signs of illness or injury.
And just real quick too, the only reason you were giving that chicken a bath going back is because of her injury, and that was the only time you only bathed her twice?
Yeah,
just
because
to keep
of her
just
bottom.
to make sure that she was clean, and that was it. So bathing your chickens is not a thing that you do.
You can if something happens.
If
if they get really dirty,
if something
you can bathe
happens,
them.
I suppose, but it's not. We don't bathe our chickens. We don't bring our chickens in the house to bathe them.
It's not like a dog where you give them a bath every once in a
just so
while.
nobody gets any misconceptions out there. We're not regularly bathing chickens. This was a one-time deal that happened
it was an injury.
because she was injured.
Yeah. The last thing I want to talk about is that it's important that chickens have things to do, especially if they're not free ranging all the time, because chickens can get bored and they can start pecking at each other. So to avoid this, there are a lot of different things you can do. We will put out cabbage or watermelon or other snacks and herbs into a feeding net that's about 1.5 to 2 feet off the ground, and they jump up and they peck at the treats inside. We also have a small ball that opens up and you can put grubs and other treats in it, close it, and they'll peck peck at it and it will roll around and the little treats fall out. Our chickens love that. We got them a swing, we got them a ladder, we got them a xylophone, we got them a mirror. And the chickens do like to look at themselves in the mirror, but everything else, they don't care.
Waste of money.
But other people say their chickens love it. So our chickens don't care.
Our chickens could care less
Yours
about any
could.
of that stuff. Yeah.
But you do want to try to find ways to keep them from getting bored.
Yeah, otherwise they will. I've noticed it when I observe them in the summertime. If they're in their run, because they're so used to roaming around and stuff, when they're in their run and they get bored, they'll start to just like go after each other.
Yeah.
So so it's something to keep an eye on. And again, every flock's different and every situation's different. But
so the way I see it is, for us, we got chickens because we thought, we're going to save so much money on eggs. We're going to get free eggs. And it's going to be great. We learned that they're not free.
that is not the case.
It cost way more than we ever anticipated it to.
If you're buying, if you want to get chickens because you think you're going to save on eggs, well, with the price of eggs now, maybe you're probably break about even.
You're going to probably start dropping probably like a couple grand in the beginning.
Yeah, you end up spending a lot of money. But I will say this. I feel, and obviously you do as well, it's completely worth it because we know it's just great having the eggs and knowing where they're coming from, how the chickens are raised. Mm-hmm. There are chickens. We feed them. We know what we're giving them for food. And we know that the egg that we're getting is of the highest, healthiest quality.
And in addition to that, there's other benefits. We love sitting outside watching our chickens. When they're free ranging, they're really entertaining. And it's so fun because they all have their own personalities. So yes, we got chickens so we could get eggs, but they've become our pets and we love them. I mean, I say to Alex, we spoil them rotten. And Alex nope, we don't spoil them because then they'd be bad chickens. But we do as much as we can for them. We want them to be happy and healthy, and we just love them so much. And they are so enriching into our lives. They bring us joy and happiness. They are something to look forward to do. I don't look at it like, oh, I got to get up and feed the chickens. I got to clean the coop. It's like, oh, I'm going to go feed the chickens. Oh, I'll clean the coop. It's not a big deal. It's not a ton of time other than the initial work that you put in. I mean, how long does it take on average a day to tend to our chickens?
Altogether,
a day.
Maybe a half hour.
Yeah.
Maybe, if that. And that's just walking back and forth, giving them food, water, that kind of thing. And that's in the winter time. I mean, it definitely in the summertime, it's a little bit more time consuming because you have to, when you let them out, we have to be with them. We don't like to come in the house and just let them around because there's hawks and other predators. Yeah. So they'll tend to stay away if the humans are out and about. So we try to stay in the general vicinity. And now, of course, since we lost a chicken who decided it would be a good idea for her to run away, we're trying to keep more instead of just sitting down watching them, we're kind of walking with them now when they go out. But that could change if we'll see what happens come springtime. Yeah. But
we've been helicopter parents to our chickens when they're free ranging.
Well, no, but that's just lately because we lost one.
Yeah.
But
our other girls were fine.
But the first flock, the first 6 that we had, they were fine.
Yeah.
We could go in the house. We knew they were not going to go far. They would stay pretty close to their run, and they'd go run back into their run to get water or whatever. Then they'd run back out and go scratching and pecking and eating flowers and bugs and grass and everything else.
Mm-hmm. But it's not a lot of time. And in the summer too, when it gets really hot, chickens naturally have a higher body temperature. So if it's 90 degrees out and humid, they might start panting. And that happened to our chickens. I was running out. You were running out every hour or so, bringing ice for the water, changing out their water, making sure they have cold water, giving them cold watermelon or frozen watermelon.
We got these little pie plate feeder things that we would fill with water and ice. So they would just stick their feet in it and run around just
we
to
put
keep
like
cool.
a brick in this kind of, not a bucket, but this container, and we put water in it and ice. So yeah, they could put their feet in. They would drink from it.
Yeah, they just end up drinking from it too, but whatever.
But and just because I worry so much about them, that we were out there a lot just trying to make sure that they were as comfortable as could be. My dad, oh my gosh, my dad brought a fan and an extension cord and was like blowing a fan to them because he felt so bad because it was so hot. It's the sweetest thing. But I mean, again, these are the things we do for the animals that we love. So
the things you do, I think you go a little bit overboard sometimes, but
I love them.
Yeah.
Right? If it were me, I want people to do that for me. If I couldn't do it for myself. But I look at it like they depend on us for care. So we're going to do everything we can to give them the best care possible.
Yeah, within reason. Within reason.
That's within reason.
Within reason.
But what do you think, honey? Do you think the chickens were a good investment?
I love their eggs, and I love eggs. Eggs are probably one of my favorite foods. So, and they're so healthy and good for you. So I always say that, like, I've stopped eating out at restaurants really, unless I know like the owners or whatever, and I know what's in the food, because you don't know unless you've made it, raised it, grown it yourself, you don't know what you're eating nowadays, especially. So I feel like it's been worth it. But if you're going into buying chickens thinking you're going to be saving money on eggs or anything like that, I got news for you. That's not the case. We actually spoke to several people. I recall speaking to a couple people at the Tractor Supply when we were first going to buy chickens, and one of them was saying, we used to have chickens, and we stopped. It's not worth it. Just go to the grocery store and buy eggs. It's not worth it. Too expensive. Too much work. Too expensive. And the guy was like, you might want to double think that, because it's not worth it. It's a lot of work. And I was like, okay, I'll take that into, I didn't know this guy. He was just trying to give me some, what he thought was helpful advice because of his experience. But we went ahead and did it anyway. But there are a lot of people that will say that it's not worth it because of the work involved, especially the initial setup. And if you don't have the right amount of land or space for it, but also, yeah, it's like feed and all that kind of stuff. It's expensive. It's not inexpensive. And we looked into making our own feed and buying like in bulk, buying the different ingredients that go into the feeds to make our own feed. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and it wasn't as cost efficient as I thought. I thought, right,
if we're going to save enough money, I'll do the work. But we really, it basically came down to about the same, and in some cases more, depending on what I was using in the feed. Yeah. Because corn is something used in a lot of feed, but corn helps keep chickens warm. So I will give them corn in the winter, cracked corn. But during the summer, I don't want them getting hotter than they need to be. So I don't want any corn in their feed. But trying to find feed that doesn't have corn, that doesn't have soy, that doesn't have seed oils, it's really hard. And you find stuff and it's stupid expensive.
So I guess, yeah, for us, that because we're so
strict on
what they can eat, because we don't want to have that in what we're eating, it is expensive. Now, if you're just somebody that's like, I don't really care about that, whatever, I just want chickens that give me eggs and whatever, and I'll just get whatever the cheapest feed is, and as long as they produce eggs and they're healthy, whatever, fine, then great. But it's the initial investment of getting a run, a coop, and
protecting it with hardware cloths, because that cloth, that's expensive.
Well, yeah, if you want to go that route, most people don't. They'll just get whatever the coop comes with, and that's fine too if that's what you want to do. We just wanted to be extra cautious. So you don't have to go as crazy as we did, but we just wanted to make sure we did everything as right as we could. And I'm sure there's probably better ways to do things than we did. We just did what we know. And as far as we know, we did the best we could do.
And it's working for us. Our chickens are happy and healthy. They're thriving. And
taking care of them now, it's part of our daily routine. It's just something we do, and we enjoy it. Like you said, you were saying you don't mind going out and clean the chicken coop. I don't either. It's not a pain. And I always I like just hanging out and talking to the chickens.
Me
As weird as it sounds. And I mean, they don't like me as much as they like you, but
I sing to the chickens.
But I'll go out there and you go to clean their coop, and they'll all be outside, and then they'll all run in one at a time to kind of see what you're doing, and they're checking on you. And it's like, okay, yeah, get out now. You're making it harder for me to clean because you're all in here. Get out.
A couple of them, it's like they come in and inspect what we're doing. Like, I need to see what you're doing.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. They're all character. They all have their own unique personalities and characteristics, and they're fun. So you can have fun with them if you choose to. That's what we do. But if you're getting them strictly for food and everything else, hopefully the information we provided is helpful to you. And best of luck if you do decide to go the chicken route.
I'm so glad we got chickens. I love them. Oh, and I didn't mention chicken math.
Huh?
So people joke around about chicken math. So we wanted originally 4 chickens to start with. We got 6 because we were told, 1 or 2 are probably going to die. So we got 6 and they survived. And then we're like, we need more chickens. And then more chickens are turning into even more chickens. So there's a joke called chicken math where basically you start with like a small amount, but you end up with a ton, which is why I got a large shed to convert to a coop so we could fit all of our chickens. I took that chicken math. I factored that in.
That's called chicken math.
It's a joke where you never heard of it.
Nope.
It's a joke because like people are like, I got 3 chickens and then I just got more, and then they end up with like 50 chickens.
Well, we might eventually get to that point, but we're slowly adding, and we're only doing it to keep up the amount of eggs that we get because we do eat a lot of eggs.
And something else I forgot to mention is because chickens lay less over the winter, if you have a surplus of eggs during the summer, you can do what's called water glassing. And that is where you it's essentially a pickling preserve in with water, and you don't wash the eggs. So when we get our eggs, we don't wash them. The eggs you get from the supermarket have been washed, and that's why they need to be refrigerated. When eggs are laid, there's what's called a protective covering called a bloom on it. And the bloom is what stops bacteria and junk to get through the eggshell into the egg. It protects it. So we leave our eggs out. They're out on the counter. They're in our pantry. We can leave them in there for weeks and even months, and they're fine. Once you wash the eggs, that bloom is gone. That protectant is gone. That's when they need to go in the fridge. So you take the cleanest eggs. If there's like any dirt on it or anything, don't use those eggs to water glass. Find the cleanest eggs. You mix it in a big glass jar with water and that preserve, the pickling preserve, and you put the eggs in there, and they can last up to a year. You take them out. You wash them before you're ready to cook them, and they're totally fine. So that is another thing that you can do. If you're getting tons of eggs in the summer but not enough in the winter, take some of your surplus instead of giving them away, water glass them, and then you have plenty of eggs in the winter.
There you go. Which I wish I would have known earlier, because we did go through a spell there where we only had at any given time, we were during the summer, we'll have 3 to 4 dozen eggs on hand. And I mean, because at one point we were getting 12 a day.
We were having 7 dozen eggs on hand.
Well, because at one point we were getting 12 a day. Mm-hmm. And then obviously that can vary, but for the most part, 7 days a week, you're getting about a dozen eggs. Ends up being a lot of eggs. And so, we gave some away but come winter time, when they slowed down, there was a time there where I couldn't eat any eggs for a couple of weeks because we didn't have enough. I was trying to stockpile them so we'd have some throughout the winter, because we dropped down to where they're maybe getting 2 or 3 a day. Now they're slowly getting back up, and we're getting some again. But
so I think the summer we're gonna do the water glass method.
Probably gonna have to. Yeah.
But there's so many things you can do to make it work for you. and some people like giving eggs away. It could be a nice gift if they're $8 a dozen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Hey, happy birthday. Here's a dozen eggs.
Here's a dozen eggs, right? Yeah. So, yeah.
There's something for everyone out there. I would just want to thank everyone for listening. This is a topic I could go on for hours and hours and hours, and I had to take notes to try to stay on track because there is so much information when it comes to chickens. I really tried to stick to the basics, but
if you're looking at, you went over a lot of stuff, so you grab a notebook and a pencil and take
listen
notes.
to this one over.
Listen to this one a couple of times because you dropped a lot of information in this one. A lot of valuable information too. That I think a lot stuff that we didn't think about at first, which we just kind of learned as we went. But that's the thing. You learn as you go. You figure it out.
And again, this is what we learned.
This is what works for us where we're at in our climate, in our state, with our town laws and all that kind of stuff. Like, you got to look into all that stuff. So wherever you are, it's going to be different for you. So just do your own research, as we always say, no matter what we're talking about.
And this is something you really need to do your own research because one size does not fit all when it comes to chickens.
Not at all. But until next time, thank you for listening. I am the Golden Greek, Alex Arion, joined as always by my beautiful, lovely wife, Monique.
And you've been listening to the Homewrecker podcast.
We love hearing from and interacting with our hearers and watchers. Feel free to reach out to us on Twitter
at HomewreckerPod.
You can also visit our website,
homewreckerpodcast.com,
where you can check out past episodes and pick up some Homewrecker Podcast gear from our online store.
Also, if you haven't already, please hit the subscribe or follow button wherever you're hearing or watching our show. That way you can be notified whenever a new episode drops. We're on all major podcasting platforms, and you can check out the video versions of our show at YouTube and Brighteon.
You can also find Monique in a few places online as well.
I'm on Twitter @_MoniqueGiselle_. If you're interested in a tarot reading, organite, incense, candles, and other cool things, you can go to my website, tarotbymonique.com. Or if you're interested in hypnotherapy, you can go to innerstandingshypnosis.com to schedule a free 20-minute consult. And follow me on Twitter @MoniquePCHT. And Alex, how can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter @TheAlexArion, and you can check out my website, AlexArionFitness.com.
And if that's too much to remember, we get it. That's why we put it all in our show notes.
Thanks for spending your time with us, and we appreciate all of your support.
We do. Thank you. We love you. Many people are unaware just how much hypnotherapy can help them, or think it's only to help lose weight or quit smoking. But there is so much more hypnotherapy can do. It can help with stress, anxiety, insomnia, phobias, performance enhancement, connecting with your spirit guides and higher self. You can even discover past lives and your life between lives. Heal traumas, break habits, find your deepest truth, or just have fun discovering who you really are, all from the comfort of your home. I'm Monique Pliakis. I'm a certified hypnotherapist, and I want to help you. Schedule a free consult by going to www.innerstandingshypnosis.com. That's INNERSTANDINGSHYPNOSIS.com.